I like to have an interesting presentation title, simplistically complicated but easy. And there's legitimacy to that. Simplistically complicated but easy, so there's no excuse to not do it. Simon, I had an interesting chat with Simon. Simon came to South Australia in 2006 and started talking about permeable pavings the hour after he left off the plane. My first project I'm talking about is 2007. So Simon's presentation convinced me, back that number of years ago, that this is a good deal, get on board, and ever since then they've flourished. I like to put this up because most people don't realise what's going on. South Australia has a water-sensitive urban design policy by the state government, a policy document. The only policy document I'm aware of in the state that doesn't mention the fact it's a policy document. And best of my understanding is it's still valid. That explains what water-sensitive urban design is. Permeable paving is an element of water-sensitive urban design. The other thing that people tend to forget is that that document has targets in it. And in part of the new planning system that went live a couple of months ago, there are elements of those targets for the very first time being reflected in the new planning system, in parts of the planning system. So that's one of my side preachers. There's permeable, and permeable, and then some more. Others have touched on it. I actually think one of the greatest misses with permeable paving is that we use the word permeable paving, but it catches so many different scenarios. And for those that aren't initiated into the gang, there's potentially a belief that it's singular in its use, application, benefit. You've got infiltration designs which are different from detention designs, which are different from retention designs. You've got trafficable circumstances, heavy trafficable, light trafficable. This leads into, we didn't cross-compare notes beforehand. This does lead into some of the previous. And then you've got systems which are just the footprint of the installation, but you've got those that also have a compounded catchment, but no more than 1 in 4, because then you get told off. So even looking at that, you've got a dozen to 20 different combinations, variations and combinations that you could use. So understanding that, but more importantly, understanding why. Pick your why. And the good news here is it's a smorgasbord and you can have all of them, or most of them. You can have as many whys as you want. And we've heard of most of them touched on: water quality, detaining or slowing stormwater, reducing quantity of stormwater, sustaining trees and landscapes, just the idea of putting water back in the ground, offsetting some of the loss of natural permeability of our suburbs. Some I haven't heard talk about yet is lack of grade. Permeable paving is a great way of fixing a location where you can't get water to grade out, or you don't have drainage. And for some of you, it's because someone else is telling you have to do it. Valid reason. This is one of the first installations we did. This is the 2007 installation, 6 months after hearing Simon talking about what a wonderful thing this is. That's the entrance to Glenelg Golf Course on James Melrose Road, just on the southern side of the airport. You're going to have fun with this one, because you're going to want to buy slides off me after this. Very first installation, people are still getting their head around how it's utilised. A lot of education and contractor at the time. This is what it looks like now. I say now. Permeable paved surface. The reason we actually use this was, again, this was a lack of grade. West Torrens is ridiculously flat. And our designers were actually struggling to get all the falls to work so that this water off this area, which was brick, imperviously brick paved beforehand, could go somewhere. So this is dead flat, and you can do that because it's permeable. The other thing that's noticeable about this is James Melrose is one of those 60-kilometre-an-hour roads where everyone does 70. I should fix that sometime, but so you also then have, it's a long stretch with not too many accesses. So you have people sort of somewhat tearing around this corner and tearing to get out in between breaks in traffic. That brings about lateral shift load. That's how it was originally built. rectangular pavers, probably similar to what we saw in the car park out over here because that's what we were using at the time. Anyone see anything in that picture that's giving you some inclinations or hesitations? Or can anyone see a little bit of a colour change in the paver? Dun, dun, dun! This is why you don't use geofabric, particularly if you have lateral loading of vehicle movements or braking or accelerating or movement. So the traffic moving on that has actually over time shunted all the pavers up to the point where you go out there, and we were pulling pavers out left, right and centre, nothing was attached to each other. So when we rebuilt it with using the Trihex, we ripped out the geofabric layer, put the screenings back down, and the Trihex has been good since then. That was the detail that it was originally installed to. Probably went overboard with the sub base. There's another project that we worked in. I have to disagree with you, Simon. This is a 100-year design standard project. Sorry, mate. Just in here, there's a little laneway. It's a laneway which all falls downhill towards the no-through end of the laneway with no drainage. The other thing that doesn't make it too good is that the way that Duncan Street is shaped, most of the runoff from in large storm events from the far side of the road actually sheets across Duncan Street and actually in higher storms can fall straight down into the laneway. So you can see there's Duncan Street up the top. This is in cross section, falls down to a laneway which is flat, and there's another house off the bottom end here. Let me jump forward. Top right, it was a dirt laneway beforehand. People didn't complain too much about it, but we picked up that if there was a larger storm event, there'd be a small river running through there. Design is pretty similar to what people have talked about. We've actually designed the storage element of this for 100-year storage. It's a project that has a pump station on it. We've left it, we only have a geofabric layer on the bottom, so there is some natural permeability to the floor, but the ag drainage there does connect to a pump station and pumps the intermediate and larger flows up and out, and the storage volume in there is enough to buffer that 100-year flow event so that we don't get people in trouble. We've also, because we're a metre-ish off the boundaries with the permeable, we've put in permeable barriers down the side just to discourage sideways movement or infiltration into the side walls to the footings of buildings. In construction, aligns with what most people were talking about. Had to work around services, and then as a finished project. And again, most of that laneway is pretty flat. Definitely everything underneath was all cut and squared. Contractors love building this because you cut square, everything is square and level and flat. And I don't have to worry about getting the grades or whatever else. Holland Street, we've now done that full length that's indicated there over multiple stages. Backside of what used to be the brewery, to be unknown in the near future. The why is you use things. We wanted to do an urban design project. We got strong public feedback that we needed to keep some of the trees in this street and not reset all the trees in rebuilding the road. So we took the trees on the right-hand side as you look at it there. We've actually run the concrete ribbon edge beam down the road, a representation of the fact we're right on the edge of the River Torrens and a winding River Torrens. But if you actually look at them closely by top, everywhere that ribbon comes out is pretty much on the drip line of the existing trees we've kept. So we've got permeable paving underneath the drip line of the trees, picking up basically what lands on it. Everything else on the road drains off, so it's not overly saturation, but it's providing benefit to the trees. The ag drainage in underneath, these are new tree installations on the bottom that have just gone absolutely bunter, A, because they're getting water, but B, because they're also established in supported cell installation. The pavers going in, and this is the sort of typical design. We've got relatively shallow formation. draining to the ag, and then coming back, and that ag drain is actually draining to wells and infiltration right at the toe of the trees. If we get the mother of all storms, then it exceeds the capacity of this in a very unneat way, we would still get overflow onto the road, the rest of the road that falls away, and into the formal drainage. There you go, 175 mils of screenings on the bottom of that one. Again, we've learnt now not to put the fabric so things don't slip slide around. Always forget the name of Stevens Avenue. Now, with a lot of the stuff that we've done, used to creatively share with Russell King, who used to be at Mitcham. We thought about opening a consultancy called Chess, two Kings. Sorry. I thought it was good. He copied some of what I did, I copied some of what he did. We shared details, we refined each other's details, and there's a street in Mitcham that looks very much like that we were doing at similar sort of times. Basically, the car parking bay along the edge of the road, great big plane trees to soak up all the water, full length of the road. I think there's 200 metres on each side of the road of parking bay. We also brought the curb in to build it further away from the tree. So the permeable is the orange hashed. And again, this is where we started bringing it. These are sort of moving through in time frame. This is where we started using a geo web in the bottom to help with shallower depth, and also more support for that base, so it doesn't want to move or sink or move around. That's a photo from this morning. I'm kind of one of those last minute organisers of my PowerPoint presentations, but the photo up the top left is actually the Mitcham project doing the same sort of thing. It was the only one I actually had of an open trench. The one thing I do note consistently across all our permeable tri-hex projects is the loss over time of the top couple of centimetres of fine screenings in the gaps. And my suspect is it's the bloody street sweepers. Because I think, particularly on this project, where we don't get as much genuine traffic load over it, it's either something to do with car tyres at speed going over and suctioning the fines out. I don't know, I'm guessing. But given it happens on this street where the cars are predominantly parking, not driving along that lane, I think the key thing that does happen is the street sweepers. So I put it down to the street sweepers. It hasn't really shown too much detriment to things, but we probably should get around and top them up every now and then, send someone out with a bucket of fines and fill them back up again. This is a building we bought opposite our council chambers on Sedona Brabham Drive. It was going to be my car park three ways project. The car park under the 173 to 178, there's a rain garden there. Most of the car park on that right-hand side drains to that rain garden. All the car park in this bottom corner drains back to permeable paving in the middle. So again, not breaching Simon's fourfold, close, but not breaching Simon's fourfold. We're also going to have permeable, so this is purely just to take, filter through and drain off, get some water quality improvement. We're also going to do some permeable paving in those bottom 4-5 spaces, which we were going to do as a deeper pavement as a storage. We were going to run the runoff from the building direct into that pavement and have a reduced outlet to get a detention benefit by using the pavers for detention purposes, not necessarily pulling a lot of water in from the top. That's that car park again this morning. Permeable paving of footpaths is something, another one of these games I used to play with Russell at Mitcham, where we've developed standard details for reduced paving width and permeable, largely because of the benefit it provides to trees. So again, standard detail that we've developed for permeable paver infill. And again, one of the things we've tried to do, and backwards and forwards with Mitcham, is we've tried to design this down to a depth which is comparable and a material quantity that's comparable, as closely comparable as we could to a conventional brick paved footpath. Not too far off. Geofabric, wrapped in underneath the brick, and again the edge restraint that Simon said is quite critical. Even though we kind of know what we're doing from it, so that's another project where we've see all the prepared permeables through the street. There's been actually a lot of conversations with the brick pavers about whether you bring the larger right up to the bottom side of the brick or the finer screenings on top, about what's easiest to work with. Again, if we had one lot of material being brought in rather than two lots, there's a dollar saving to that. And realistically, in my mindset, the finer screenings are predominantly about getting a smooth bed, the ease of getting a smooth bed to put the pavers on. You get a contractor who's happy to use the larger screenings right up to the underside of the paver. There's a little bit of a dollar saving in that. Mind you, anyone notice what's wrong with that picture? From the detail I showed you before, who's paying attention? You can see the geofabric, you can see the screenings, and they put the concrete on the screenings, and nothing's holding the screenings in. So that concrete is just going to slide out. This contractor lost their profit margin because they had to go back and rebuild the edgings of most of these. So even though we know what we're talking about, you still need to have someone knowing what they're talking about, working with the contractors. And again, same thing. This one was a lot of small trees, so we just did the whole run in permeable rather than trying to break it up. We're patch filling in existing concrete footpaths with the permeable. So instead of just pulling up concrete slabs where they've been lifted by trees and putting more concrete back to come back in 5 years' time to lift the concrete out again because it's lifted again, instead of putting the concrete back, we put the brick back. Why do it yourself when you get someone else to do it? Pay for it. This street used to be an old industrial garage, went to a residential development with a whole lot of, basically the developer had to rip up everything and do everything in the verge. So we made them do permeable past all the trees. Driveways aren't permeable, but adjacent to the trees there's permeable. And the developer paid for the vast majority of that. And again, even starting to play around with different colours. When we're doing more upscaled locations using different colour. That colour mix we're actually starting to use more often now because it sits more comfortably next to old concrete footpaths than what the grey does, and mindful that that's probably a lighter colour and therefore has less urban heat impact. And when you go to something which has the tri-hex pavers all the way through, you can actually get, and I think Simon or one of the other speakers mentioned it, here's your impervious surface blending straight into the permeable surface with no changes formation underneath, obviously, but with someone walking over the top of it isn't really going to notice. Developers, simple and easy. A nursing village, nursing home, all the car parking spaces are permeable. The roadway is paved, exactly what we've seen before. A affordable housing multi-storey unit development. So affordable housing, you think trying to reduce price. Again, same principle. This one, they actually got what convinced them is that they were actually able to undertake most of the stormwater detention for the site in the pavers rather than having separate tanks. So when they offset the fact they had to put tankage in, and you just add your paver depth a little bit deeper, the formation underneath a little bit deeper and achieve it in that, suddenly they were sold on that. What's good about that and the development thing, so we were talking about legislation versus bottom-up versus you convince them once and they come back. Same developer is now developing that whole block of land with these multi-storey affordable housings. Every single one of these car parks came to us the very first time we saw the design with that car park approach from the other side. So there was no hard sell because they had already realised the benefits on the previous job. They came to us with it already on here. So you break your kahunas once and you get the ongoing rewards. And that's an earlier one, big tree, paving around it. Keep your eyes out, you see it everywhere. One of the main streets in Stirling is all permeable. Bottom right-hand corner is the childcare centre I dropped the little one off to this morning. You learn from others. I've got my Sydney Olympic. I was there in two and a half years ago. The other thing that no one else has mentioned, one of the things that gets thrown in the local government regularly about use of permeable pavement is high hills, particularly with the trihex. I haven't heard anyone mention that. This is my uniqueness. Sydney Olympic Park now is a major function centre. Hundreds of thousands of people, and that permeable, I've shot the wrong direction, is right next to the rail terminal, which is how most people get there. Everyone coming to that venue from the rail terminal, which is the majority of the thousands and thousands of people, would walk that permeable to get from A to B. Everywhere we've installed trihex in our council area, not once had someone come to us and say they had a heel issue with the footpath trihex. You get influenced by others, then you can influence. My moment of fame with gardening gurus that had heard about the project and wanted to come and see it. And you don't have to be begged. That's my little backyard. I made my own permeable pavement area with just using normal bricks and a bit of agricultural treatment. Philosophical moment. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Harass developers, harass everyone else in your organisation. You're bound and guaranteed to get some projects going. You're bound to get some good feedback. You're bound to get a momentum and things rolling. And if I can leave you with one message, just do it.